what you're seeing happen between China right now and the West, right? Let's just collectively call it the West, is Xi Jinping is correctly realizing that this is a time to demonstrate unity and power in the East because the West is struggling under democracy, right? You've got NATO arguing with each other's members. You've got Hungary, a NATO partner altogether, actively trying to propose that Russia should be left alone, right? Like you've got internal conflict in NATO. You have the disaster of what our midterm elections just turned into, right? Basically
How so?
Another
Gridlock?
A gridlock, continued gridlock with transfer of power looking like it's most likely going to go to the Republicans in Congress, which means the purse strings of the government are going to get tied down. So, blue Senate, blue executive, a red Congress, that just means money's getting tight.
Yep.
It doesn't mean that we're going to start getting along. If anything, it means
we're as divided as we've ever been.
Yeah.
And these elections are showing that. It's right down the middle. So it doesn't matter.
So what Xi Jinping wants to do is he knows that the win for China and the win for Chinese influence around the world is to show that China can get stuff done, where the West can't even figure out their own backyard.
But why is he taking a senior citizen out of like the nursing home?
Because
Play the video?
Hu Jintao is the only other person that carries anywhere near as much influence as Xi Jinping.
He doesn't look like he knows what he ate for lunch today.
Yeah. No. Don't mistake the way that an old man looks.
Yeah,
he sat in Xi's seat before Xi sat there.
Look at this.
Look at Xi's face. That is the ultimate. Like, throw some sunglasses on him with a cigarette and say, "Not in here, bitch." He's like, "Oh yeah."
So this is also important because if you watch,
is he trying to resist?
So if you get he's not resisting. He's just an old guy. He's asking questions. You see him keep reaching for that sheet of paper. He's trying to ask. Listen up, Julian. He's trying to ask questions about why changes were made to the panel without his approval. And now, as he's being marched out, watch how nobody looks at him. Nobody looks at him because they realize this is a move that Xi is making. So they're not looking. No eye contact. No eye contact. These are all people that have worked under Hu Jintao.
Wow.
And they're all essentially demonstrating their deferral to Xi Jinping. This is a clear message to the world that Xi Jinping is the consolidated source of power in China and that they are unified behind Xi Jinping.
So what happened to him?
Yeah, we don't know.
What is
probably nothing. I mean, the dude is a legend in China. He's probably living in some nice pagoda up in the mountains, just
that's nice.
Being left alone.
All right, he got a nice retirement package.
They gave him Pebble Beach.
He's too big, too big to just be disappeared. Too important to be disappeared.
But could you imagine that ever happening here?
No.
Imagine somebody walking Sleepy Joe out. He'd go the wrong way. But,
oh my gosh! So that guy's equivalent to like what? He's equivalent to like
Xi Jinping before Xi.
Yeah, he was when Bush was around and Obama's first time.
Yep.
Yeah, he's the guy that essentially modernized China, brought China into the fold of world superpowers.
Why do you talk about? And I think some of it's obvious to people listening, but I just want to hear you express it. Like when you're always going right to China as the main adversary here, and to quote you on the Patrick Bet-David podcast, you said you were stationed in Asia. You're not allowed to say where, but what languages do you speak again?
Thai, Chinese, and Japanese.
Okay, so you said you do the math, right? So obviously this is a topic you know something about. Like what makes them the ultimate threat and like what's your worst case scenario with our relations with China over the next 10 years?
The reason that you see me jump right to China is because of three main things, right? First, we spent 20 years, just like Jim was saying, we spent 20 years fighting a global war on terrorism. Guess who wasn't involved in the global war on terrorism? China. So that means all of our money, all of our effort, all of our attention was fighting a transnational threat that China wasn't spending any time or any money on.
And they were building.
They were building and they were perfecting how they could penetrate the West because the West was distracted.
And how are they doing that?
Now let's move on to point number 2.
And watching our mistakes, but watching what we did wrong.
Whenever you go down into a mine, right? Back in the day, miners used to take, what was it, a parrot? A parakeet?
The canary.
A canary.
Yep.
They used to take a canary down into a mine, right? And the reason, and it was because the canary, when the canary bit the dust, that's how they would know that there wasn't enough oxygen to keep the miners alive so they could get out. Our canary is Australia. Australia knows that. They've been our canary for a long time. So guess what happened about 4 years ago? Australia realized that Chinese were sending Chinese students, Chinese professors, Chinese mining experts into Australia specifically to undermine Australian politics, Australian student mindset and ideology.
Mission accomplished.
And Guess who Australia's most important export-import partner is? China. And they were so upset. The Australians, God love them, because they're just a fearless bunch of savages sometimes. They were like, we caught you, China. We're going to let the whole world know we caught you, and we're going to penalize you. Even though they know that penalizing China means penalizing themselves, right? So Australia's been in this battle with the Chinese for like the last 5 years.
But why were they the most totalitarian in the lens of what China was trying to do with when the pandemic just kept going on and on?
You're distracted. That's an offshoot that's not relevant to your first question.
Okay.
Right? So we have our canary. So my 3 points, right? First, they didn't participate in the global war on terror. So they were mastering their future plan because they had a 50-year plan, right? Then we have our canary go off in Australia. And now the third point, they are poised to become the world's economic superpower by 2032. Economics is what drives everything in human existence, right? The more money you make, the more money you can spend developing weapons, the more military you can build, the more everybody else wants to be your friend because you have the most money. What made the United States the superpower that we are? Economics. Our economics are starting to fall behind Chinese economics. China knows that. So they're very focused on becoming the world's economic superpower. And once they're the economic superpower, then it's very, very hard for us to catch up after that, which is why you see the race kicking up now. Trump kind of called attention to it, but the world hated Trump, so the world was kind of not open to his point of view.
Exactly.
But one of the only policies that carried on from the Trump administration into the Biden administration were the China policies.
Yes, I'm seeing that a lot.
So those are my 3 points. Sorry to cut you off.
No, that was
that's
perfect.
outstanding. I mean, that's outstanding. And you think about, they're all in as well. We have offices near every major university. We at least have one person that sits that's, an experienced counterintelligence person, as experienced as the Bureau can be. And they sit outside these universities and they recruit assets within to find out what the deal is, whether or not they're, actually like a proactive asset, somebody that's trying to do things to harm U.S., or whether they're just gathering information. And if you go to any major financial institution and or investment bank in the city, you will find interns within that organization who are being recalled back to China in order to report, and we're allowing it to happen. We are kind of nervous about whether or not we should hire or fire or get rid of or even do background checks on these people, where they're coming from, what they're doing, what their incentive is, what their orders are, why they're going back, working for 6 weeks at a major New York corporation that's moving and shaking, and then heading back for 6 weeks and then coming back to the States.
Do you know? So Chinese students make up the largest contingent of foreign students going to American law schools.
Yep.
1 out of every 3 of those graduates goes back to China.
Why? Is it because they want to learn how to use our laws against us?
We don't know what they do when they go back to China, but what we do know is that China knows how. China's strategy, if you look at what they did in Hong Kong, if you look at how they've handled the Bahamas, if you look at how they handled the Central America, it certainly suggests.
What they do in the Bahamas?
The
FTX?
They own the Bahamas, right?
Yeah.
FTX.
Hold on. Where were you guys on Monday?
Where is
were
that?
Both of you on Monday?
Oh my God.
Where is that money?
That is
It's in your
fucking crazy.
bank account, Jim.
At least he got dressed.